Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of the Fishing Teacher, and really appreciated you guys coming by the channel to check today's video out. We are going to talk about finding bass quickly today. One of the things I want to do, I sort of want to have sort of a wide-ranging conversation that gives you some good fundamental starting points about when you go out fishing. Say you launch your boat, you put your boat in the water, you don't really know what's going on as far as the fishing, you know, what you need to be trying, you know, you may be intimidated about the lake a little bit. I want to give you guys sort of an easy foundational approach that allows you to find some bass quickly. And I think everybody struggles with that, because in bass fishing, one of the things you're going to realize is you're eventually going to catch fish. It's just how long it's going to take you to figure it out. Once you get just a basic understanding of how to bass fish, it's like sometimes, you know, you can find them the first half hour you're out there. Other days it may take a week to find the fish. So I'm going to give you guys sort of a system that I've developed over the years of fishing that really helps me locate some fish pretty quick based upon the time of year you're going there. So we'll get into that in today's video. Also, guys, I just wanted to thank everybody out there. You guys hear me talking about this all the time. I know you get tired of it, but it's a really big deal. Thank you very much for everybody that has been using and bookmarking my Tackle Warehouse link that I put in every video description. If you guys are one of the people that are bookmarking and using that link for your tackle purchases, you're a big reason the videos are on YouTube, and a big thank you for me and my family. So again, I'll have all that links in the description of this video if you want to use that. Really appreciate it. Okay, you hear me talk about this a lot, guys, in the videos, that bass fishing is the most difficult sport in the world, because there's just so much to it. There's so many variables, there's so many uncontrolled variables. And the only thing that you can really do is control the things that you can control. And a lot of that has to do with where you decide to fish and the technique that you decide to use. So I sort of want to give you guys how I approach a lake to find fish quickly. Now, the first thing you have to do is you have to have a basic understanding of seasonal patterns. That's the first thing. And when I do these YouTube videos, those are the least important topics. It's like when I do a YouTube video on bass behavior or movement, most people tune out, and they need to be tuning in, because this is what allows you to locate bass quickly. It's not the secret color of lure, it's not the new lure out there. It's having a foundational approach to seasonal patterns, unless you are a live scoper. If you're a live scoper and you target that population of fish in the lake, then the only thing that you need is your live scope. You don't, and that's why I don't like it, is because it diminishes what fishing really is: locating, finding, hunting bass, you know, without the aid of technology with that. So first thing you have to do is you have to, once you have the basic understanding of seasonal patterns based upon the time of the year and the water temperature and the water, you know, color, the water level, all that type of stuff, it goes a long way. So the first thing you can do that's going to help you out is use the internet to access information about the lake you're going to. Unless you're fishing like a 50-acre lake or a little small body of water, any decent sized lake in the country or river, you're going to be able to find some information on the internet. So Google the lake you're going to or the river you're going to, and just put in, you know, catching bass on lake whatever in November, and it's going to give you a little bit of information. It's going to give you an idea what to look for in terms of what the lake is like, you know, what the past things that have been working, you know, are. So that's going to give you an idea that helps you eliminate that a little bit. The next thing you should do is, whether it be a paper map or a, you know, GPS mapping system, take some time to look at the entire lake and see how the lake lays out. See how many creek arms are in the lake. See how many different rivers come into the lake. See how many points are on the lake. You know, get on Google Earth and find out how many boat docks are on the lake. Google Earth, guys, is a great access, a great resource to learn more about a lake you've never seen, or even a lake you've been on before, a lot, because it tells you where the obvious bank structure is. Lay down trees, rocky banks, you know, docks, anything that the lake may have. So you've done a lot of your homework before you get there. You've compiled this homework, you've got a little bit of information about the patterns going on, and then you've sort of reacquainted yourself, or you've given yourself a mental picture about what the lake looks like from seeing it on Google Earth or even the Navionics web app. So this is a big deal, that right off the bat, it allows you to sort of practice without even being on the water. So based upon that, and without getting into like the seasonal patterns specifically, because we could take all day and talk about this, given the fact once you have that information, that is when you sort of go out there and you can formulate your approach. Now, let me give you one prime example. Let's say, for example, we're going fishing in late October, which it is right now at the time that I film this video. And you can use this any time of the year. This is just like how I would approach it, you know, this time of year. I'd approach it different times of the year, but this would be my system. Let's say, for example, that I'm going to go to, well, I'll tell you a prime example. I'm getting ready to go to the Toyota Series Championship in a couple weeks at Lake Wheeler. So here is my process about how I go to find fish quickly. The first thing that I'm going to decide is how much time I have to spend on it. Now, you may have a day of fishing, or you may have a couple days of practice like I'm going to have. So I look at this particular lake, like Lake Wheeler, and I'm going to determine, it's like, where do I think the highest percentage of fish are going to be based upon the time of the year. So I know at Lake Wheeler, you know, it's the fall time of the year, you know, you're going to have some fish starting to move shallow. You know, there's going to be fish moving in the back of the coves and the creeks. Lake Wheeler's a little bit different because it's a river type lake, so you have flats off of the main river that the fish will get onto. But ultimately, being the fact that it's going to be the first part of November, I know there's going to be a good population of the bass shallow. So right off the bat, that's going to allow me, or you, or anyone, to eliminate those deeper water options. That's going to be off the table. So I've eliminated half of the lake right off the bat. So given the fact that I know the fish are going to be shallow, the way that I lay out and the way that I'm going to find these fish is I'm going to systematically go through some places. Like when I get down there, I may go to the back of the coves and I may fish a spinnerbait or a buzzbait or a swim jig in some really shallow water in the back of the coves. And I'll try that for maybe an hour. If it's working, great. I'll duplicate that pattern around the lake. If it's not working, after about an hour, I'll discard it and say my next move, instead of like doing something completely radically different, I'm going to move out and I may start fishing whatever available cover is further out in the coves, you know, towards the main lake. So I'll go 2/3 of the way or halfway in the coves, and I may hit a boat dock, or I may hit a lay down tree, something like that, just to get a feel if there's any fish using different parts of the creek, or I may hit a secondary point. Again, if that's working, I can duplicate it. If that's not working, then I sit down and say, okay, I've just fished, an hour's worth of these big coves that look really good, and it's not working. So what do I do next? The next thing that I'll do to find fish is maybe I'll move out to the main lake, and maybe there's a bunch of riprap. I'll try cranking a riprap for 30 or 40 minutes. And then if that's not working, I may fish some various type of rock banks or rock transitions or whatever cover is available on the main lake, and run with it like that. If that's working, again, fine, duplicate it. If that doesn't work, then it's like, okay, what I'm going to do next? Okay, let me pick out a couple of the major creek arms, and I'm going to start running towards the back 2/3 of these major creek arms, and I'm going to fish whatever available cover is there. So the point of it is, guys, is you constantly have to be looking and moving until you get a couple key bites. That's the way you do it. So for example, in your favorite lake where you're fishing, let's say for example you're on a 20,000 acre lake that's got some fairly clear water down by the lower end of the lake, and it gradually gets a little bit stained as you get up the lake, which that's how most lakes lay. The way that you find fish quickly, again, is based upon that season, and you go into that area and try to maximize every piece of cover in that area. So let's go back to your favorite lake. Let's say you're going fishing this weekend. It's the end of October, and what do we know about October again? Water levels are usually a little bit lower. Water temperatures are starting to drop a little bit. The fish are starting to be, a little bit more active shallow. So in your favorite lake, you may run, up into where you think the more dirty water is. And, whether that be in the upper river part of the lake or the creek part of the lake, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, these fish, everything is pointing to the fact that they're going to be shallow, the water's stained, so I'm going to go up and I'm going to look at this stained water, and I'm going to fish a spinnerbait or a square bill crankbait, or I'm going to fish a jig around this particular cover. And you go and you exhaust that, and you do that. And if that's, again, I'm basing upon if something's not working, what you can do to find them quickly. So if you try that for a little bit, The next thing you do is maybe have a little bit different water clarity change. So instead of fishing that square-billed crankbait or that chatterbait in 1.5 feet of visibility, you run down the lake 4 or 5 miles, you get in a little bit cleaner water, and say the water visibility now is like 2 to 3 feet. So a little bit cleaner, and you start taking advantage of that. Maybe you move out and fish some main lake points. You know, maybe you put on like a walking topwater, like a Spook, and fish some shady banks. You know, whatever cover's available with that. And then again, if that's not working, after about an hour or two, run another 4 or 5 miles down the lake to try to get in some different type of environment. You know, water's going to be different color. Maybe it's going to be clearer down on the lower end of the lake. You're going to have more different type of structures. Maybe you have more, you know, main lake flat points, or you have more bluffs. You have different type of options to fish. And you constantly try different options with different techniques. This is how you figure the fish out. Now, once you do get on something, let's say, for example, the shallow, dirty water crankbait pattern is working. One of the things you can do with that is how you find fish and catch a lot of fish is you maximize that. So let's say, for example, you run up the river and you get on this nice channel bank that's got some rocky banks on it and some lay down trees, and you catch a 2-pound bass on your square-bill crankbait. And then you can't really catch much more. It's like, it's not really working. Or maybe you catch 2 or something like that. You're catching some fish, but you're not catching as many as what you feel you need to be catching. Then how you find more fish and how you find the fish quickly is you say to yourself, okay, I know these fish are here and they're hitting the crankbait a little bit, which is a reaction lure. Let's try to better this situation. And sometimes that can be with you go to a different size of crankbait, maybe a little bigger, maybe a little smaller. Or you change colors. Let's say you're using a Tennessee shad pattern, and maybe you go to a perch pattern or some type of a you know, blackback chartreuse side. Maybe there's a color change that you can make that triggers more fish or bigger fish. And then if that is working, great. If it doesn't working, well, you say, well, maybe these bigger fish aren't chasing and they want something a little slower. So you pick up a jig or a creature bait or a Texas rig worm or a shaky head, and you start going down through that same bank that you know fish are there because you caught them on the crankbait. And sometimes that will just, the light switch will turn on and you figure out the right bait. So once you are in an area where you're confident there's fish in, that's when it allows you the luxury to try and experiment with different techniques. And most of the time, if there are bass in an area, you're not, when you catch that bass, you're not hitting on the best technique. You're hitting on the fact that there's fish there and they bit your lure, even though it may not have been the best lure, but there's enough fish there to show you that the fish are there. So you have to figure out what that is going to be, what that looks like. And that's something I can't tell you, nobody can tell you. It's a matter of trial and error and experimentation. And this goes on in every single part of the lake. I mean, let's say, you know, let's go to the other side of the lake. Let's say we go down to the lower end of that lake and your water visibility is 4 feet. And you're down there in that 4 foot of water and you're out on some main lake points and you're catching a fish dragging a football head jig. But again, maybe you're catching 1 or 2, you fished 5 or 6 points and you've caught 1 or 2 fish. You know the fish are on the points, but you're not dialed in quite. So one of the things you can do with that is instead of throwing that football head jig, you know, go back through that same point, get up shallow on that point, and throw a Spook in that clear water, or throw a whopper plopper, or something along those lines. Or maybe graph out around that point and see if you see any suspended fish out on the end of that point. Or maybe they want some type of reaction strike like cracking a tube off that point or burning a deep diving crankbait. But the point is once you do get bit, you know, exhaust your other alternatives to allow you to maximize that thing. So the biggest mistake that I see with people that have a hard time locating fish is they get too locked in to one particular technique or one particular area. That is probably the thing that will keep you from finding fish quicker than anything else. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to, you know, approach it with a little bit of an open mind. If you, say for example, if you have it in your mind that they're gonna bite a jig, you've heard about it, people are catching them on a jig, you know, and you think you can catch them on a jig, there's a lot of different things you can do besides throwing the same jig you've been throwing. Say you pick up a brown jig with a green pumpkin, you know, trailer on it, Instead of just fishing it a while and not getting any bites, and say they're not biting a jig, change up your size, trim your skirt, have a longer skirt, change your trailer profile, go from a curly tail trailer to a chunk trailer, you know, change up your different color options, mix and match your color trailers with your jig trailers. And that's how you figure out how those fish want, you know, the particular bait very quickly. So a lot of times it's easier said than done. It's like, you know, when I give you this advice, or you hear advice on YouTube about this, it's all relative to what has worked for us in the past. These are some things that have worked for me. But the biggest thing that I always talk about in bass fishing is use your own creativity. You do not ever underestimate your own creativity in fishing, because let's say you and I go fishing together, and say there's this long stretch of riprap bank, and okay, I say to you, it's like, okay, I want you to get up on front of the trolling motor, and I'm gonna go back, and I'm not even gonna watch what you're doing. I'm gonna look out the back of the boat. You fish down this riprap here and see how you do. And then after you're done, I'll fish down the riprap and see how I do. Now, based upon our own imagination, creativity, you may say, well, you know, they're gonna want a jerkbait on this riprap, or they're gonna want a crankbait on this riprap. And I may go through it not even knowing how you're gonna approach it. And I'm gonna say, well, I think they're gonna bite a jig on this riprap. And sometimes I'm going to be right sometimes, and you're going to be right sometimes. If we do this 100 times, you're going to beat me sometimes, I'm going to beat you sometimes. But the point is use your creativity and your imagination, you know, when you're confronted with something like that. So anyway, I hope it makes sense, guys. Like I said, drop me some comments if you guys got some questions. Maybe I can expand a little further, and we'll talk later.